Sukkar, thanks for joining us. You've sent yourself for investigation to the Department of Finance over allegations you're involved in having electorate officers involved in branch recruitment and other Liberal Party activity during work hours. What's your response to those allegations?
Oh, well, Andrew, obviously I've repeatedly rejected the allegations, and to put it beyond any doubt, I referred the matter to the Secretary of the Department of Finance to review all of the matters that were put forward, and it's now with the department. They're conducting the review, and I will leave them to do that work to put it beyond doubt.
Well, a lot of the reporting on this has focused on two words from you. So we've got Marcus Bastian. He's reported to have penned a memo which sets out a plan to build a faction with you inside Kevin Andrews' office and have people spending 3 hours a day on party political activity, it's alleged. You're reported to have responded to this memo by saying good summary. Do you recall saying that? And what did it mean?
Well, Andrew, as I said, I haven't authorised the misuse of electorate office staff. I'm very confident of that position, which is why I've referred it to the department to undertake an independent review. They're undertaking that review now, and I'm sure that that review will put these allegations beyond doubt. They're doing their work. We're cooperating with the department, and that's where it's at the moment.
OK, well, let me just ask you about a couple of the allegations of kind of nepotism and how you feel about being attacked on this front. You've been accused over the fact your brother was employed in Kevin Andrews' office and a close friend, Matt Pham, was employed in your office, and Marcus Bastian's wife in your office. Were those appointments all above board?
Look, again, Andrew, all of the staffing decisions that have been made by me are appropriate. Again, that's why I've referred it to the Secretary of the Department of Finance. They're undertaking their review. We're working with them, and I'm very confident of that review process.
Let me ask, were the Department of Finance to find against you, would you have to then resign from the ministry?
Andrew, as I said, the review's being undertaken as we speak. I'm very confident of the outcome of the review. We're providing all the information that the department has requested, and we'll continue to work with them. I'm very confident of the position, the work that's been undertaken by all of my staff all the time. And again, these are matters ultimately for the department to undertake, and that's what they're doing at the moment.
How do you feel about Marcus Bastian's resignation from the Liberal Party over this?
Oh, look, Andrew, in the end, matters around individual party members and their status within the party is a matter for them and the Victorian division. Obviously, we have thousands and thousands of members of a party. We're a volunteer-driven organisation. That's the strength of the Liberal Party. We, of course, have, again, thousands of people who work day and night, not for their own benefit, but for the benefit of the country and to ensure that their values and beliefs are reflected in public policy. They're the people that I work with closely on a daily basis. Indeed, I think all members of Parliament do. As for individuals and their own conduct, they have to account for their own conduct, and they have. And I understand the Victorian division is continuing to look at a range of matters, and they should do that work themselves, but that is ultimately a matter for the administrative wing of the party, not for the parliamentary wing of which I'm a part.
Well, a lot of the focus seems to have been around what's called branch stacking, but could also be called branch recruitment. Do you admit you've been involved in some of that? You've been trying to bring people into the Liberal Party, and I guess you'd defend that.
Well, look, Andrew, I wouldn't dwell on it for too long. I mean, look, ultimately, again, we're a volunteer organisation. Our ability to connect with individuals, with community groups, indeed our ability to be able to campaign effectively relies on people taking time out of their lives in a voluntary capacity to join a party, to be involved. My message to all Australians has been, of course, get involved in politics, and no doubt I focus on those who share the values of the Liberal Party. I think it's incumbent on all Liberals to try their best to build our volunteer base, to build the base of people who support our values. Of course I've done that, and I think every Member of Parliament has done it, but ultimately right now, in the middle of a pandemic, and for many, many months, I've been focused on the issues that affect everyday Australians, their livelihoods, their jobs, their ability to feed their families in many cases, and that's what has been my overwhelming focus, certainly this year, but indeed my entire time in the ministry.
It looks like you've been ratted on by a former staffer. How do you feel about that, and how do you feel about the Victorian laws which allow you to be secretly recorded without your permission?
Look, Andrew, I'm not going to run a commentary on these sorts of matters. Obviously, we'd all like private conversations to remain private, but we've also got to be realistic. In 2020, Andrew, most people are walking around with a recording device in their pocket, being a phone. That's the reality of life, and I think that just means we have to be true to ourselves privately and publicly, act respectfully privately and publicly, and there's really no point in whinging about these sorts of things. Of course we would like, all of us, private confidences and private conversations to remain that way, but that's the reality of the world we live in today.
OK, well, let me ask about the Victorian lockdown roadmap now. The PM obviously has made clear that, in his view, the plan isn't a road out fast enough. What's your view of it, and what would sticking to that roadmap mean for the Victorian and national economy?
Well, look, there's no doubt that the economic devastation of the Victorian second wave has been phenomenal, and it will continue to be. I think, as the PM said yesterday, we would be very hopeful that this is a worst-case scenario roadmap, that indeed we're able to meet the hurdles, and in many cases, again, as the PM said, these hurdles are very high, particularly if you look at where perhaps New South Wales would be now as far as lockdowns if they applied similar tests. So there's no doubt the economic devastation on Victoria, that of course has an impact nationally, but primarily has a huge impact on Victorians, is going to be phenomenally devastating. And that's our concern as an economic team. We're providing huge amounts of support. We've extended JobKeeper, which will be overwhelmingly adopted or overwhelmingly utilised by Victorians. More Victorians we expect will use JobKeeper post-September than every other state and territory combined. So we are providing that support. Again, the PM, I think, has made the self-evident point that the Victorian roadmap, which is a Victorian state government roadmap, we will want to see what additional support they are proposing to put in place for the businesses and the individuals who are going to be completely devastated by what is a very protracted lockdown.
Well, what was your personal reaction when you saw the targets they're setting?
Look, I mean, Andrew, I think, again, the bar seems to be very high. I'm a Victorian. My family, my extended family, all of my friends here in Victoria are living through this, as are millions of Victorians, and I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a pang of disappointment when I saw what was proposed. But in the end, we need to do everything we can to support the Victorian state government to exceed all of the targets in this roadmap to ensure that it is a worst-case scenario. We'll do everything we possibly can. We're providing every form of support, whether it's ADF support, whether it's other technical support, and we've done that the entire way through because right now this is again, a devastating situation for so many livelihoods. And of course, the level of despair that I think has entered the community is quite troubling, and that's why I applaud the Treasurer, who has been speaking about a sense of hope, a sense of optimism, and a realistic roadmap out of these level of restrictions being so important for the psyche of Victorians.
Do you believe the Victorian contact tracing system, the public health system, is up to scratch when it comes to preventing further outbreaks once you get out of this?
Well, look, Andrew, my advice is that the gold standard on contact tracing has certainly been New South Wales, and they have shown that through vigorous, well-resourced, well-organised contact tracing that you can get on top of clusters, ring-fence them and ensure a level of normal life can go on around that. I think it's probably uncontroversial to say that that hasn't been the case here in Victoria, although I hope that that is improving. So between the issues that have emanated from hotel quarantine mismanagement, I think being behind the eight ball on contact tracing has no doubt meant that Victoria is in this parlous position, certainly when you compare it to the other seven states and territories around the country. It's not just an accident that Victoria is in this position.
Now, on this contact tracing issue, I guess we were told by the PM this COVID safe app would be the way out, etc. Yet when your phone's locked, it doesn't work, it hasn't been used that much. Is that a disappointment?
Look, I don't think anyone ever suggested that the COVID Safe app was a silver bullet. I know I didn't when I was communicating it with my electorate or more broadly. I think we've always...
Well, there have been advertisements about it.
I think the evidence is clear, though, Andrew, that it has been a useful tool. That's been confirmed by New South Wales contact tracing teams. I know that the Victorian contact tracing teams have started to use it, which I think confirms that it's a tool in the toolkit that assists.
But it isn't as effective as we were promised.
It was.
Mr. Sukkar, it isn't as effective as we were promised, is it?
Well, that's my exact point, though, Andrew. I don't think you were promised that it was a silver bullet at all. You were promised, and Australians were promised, that it was a tool in the toolkit to assist with contact tracing, and I think the evidence is clear that it absolutely is a tool that has provided and has assisted in contact tracing. That makes a difference, but there is so much more to the job of contact tracing. Let's remember about 40% of devices that could download this app have downloaded it. So, of course, that's not complete coverage around the whole country, but I'll tell you what, it's a tool that our contact tracing teams would rather have than not have. So on that basis alone, it's a worthwhile enterprise.
All right, well, onto the budget. The PM's made it clear that the budget is going to be about lower taxes. Pretty clear now we'll see the income tax cuts brought forward. Would that be both elements of the package, and what would that do for the economy?
Well, Andrew, look, all of those matters will be announced by the Treasurer on budget night. In the end, this budget will be about trying to encourage as many Australians, as many businesses to invest, to create jobs. That is what this budget unquestionably has to be about and will be about. How do we encourage businesses, Australian businesses, large, small, medium enterprises, to invest, to take risks, to show that entrepreneurialism, which in the end employs fellow Australians and creates wealth and prosperity for everyday Australians. That's what this budget will be primarily about. Now, there are a whole lot of things that we can do, we believe, to try and assist in that process. It'll all be announced on budget night, but there will be a singular focus on jobs, and I think that's what Australians expect of us.
So will you have another go at company tax cuts? It's always hard to get that one through the Senate.
Andrew, there will be a suite of measures that we put in place and reforms that we put in place to encourage businesses and individuals and households to have that confidence to invest, that confidence to make decisions in their own best interests, which we know has flow-on impacts throughout the economy that will mean more Australians are employed, more Australians are able to fulfil all of their dreams. And
is that a yes about company tax cuts?
No, Andrew, you will see the contents of the budget on budget night, and I appreciate these sorts of questions that you have to ask. But from my perspective, this will be a jobs budget and I think that is what Australians would be hopeful for and would expect from a Morrison government particularly.
All right, well, what about on infrastructure spending? Been a bit of talk about this, or is it the federal government's view the state should continue to carry the load there? You've got $100 billion over 10 years. Could you massively expand that, or are you calling on the states to do that?
Well, we've lent very heavily into infrastructure. If you look historically, the federal government at the moment, as you rightly point out, $100 billion over 10 years is a significant investment from the federal government in infrastructure projects throughout the country. Obviously, we've been focused on, and even as early as late last year, or recently as late last year, we were very focused on bringing forward as many of those infrastructure projects as possible, because the long lead times of infrastructure projects often mean that you don't get the shovels in the ground at the time you need. I think we're working very hard to ensure that this time, in this budget and this year, we've got a huge pipeline of projects that are continuing to progress with federal government support, which obviously underpins so much economic activity. So I think we've lent so heavily into infrastructure that a real focus on getting those projects shovel ready and started as soon as possible should be the absolute focus. But I know that Alan Tudge and the Deputy Prime Minister Michael McCormack are always looking at opportunities for the federal government to support even bigger and better infrastructure projects, and I'm sure that that's still the case.
Might we see an extension of Home Builder in there?
Well, look, Home Builder's been extraordinarily successful. It's supporting tradies' jobs throughout the supply chain. In the month after Home Builder was announced, we saw a 77% increase in new home sales, and new home sales basically means jobs. It means tradies on site. It means timber mill workers building the frames and trusses, the manufacturing workers making the bricks and the glass and the tiles. It's certainly underpinned a huge amount of activity in the residential construction sector. So in the context of it being a very successful program, we'll see how it goes for the rest of this year, and that'll be an assessment we'll make then.
And just finally, Mr Sukkar, we've had a situation this morning where a couple of Australian journalists have left China in a hurry from the ABC and the Fin Review. Clearly, on Australian government advice, it's been reported, clearly tensions reasonable level with China at the moment. Do you have concerns about the knock-on effect of that on the Australian economy, those tensions?
Well, look, we have deep trading ties with China, and it would be glib or foolish for anybody to say that you can completely divorce our diplomatic relationship from our trading relationship, but we do have very deep trading ties, and even in recent times, if you look at our mineral resources exports to China that have held up phenomenally, indicates that there's a robust element to our relationship. But of course, all of these sorts of issues that I would broadly put in the more diplomatic side of our relationship, of course, they are things that we take into account. But ultimately, we have goods that China wants to buy, and China has goods that we want to buy, and in the end, that's what will drive any trading relationship. So we will continue to work as closely as we can, but in the end, our values and our principles are things that I think Australians expect us as a government to stand up for, and we always will.